Hey y'all, good morning. Hope you're doing well today. So I wanted to share some thoughts about the fruits of the Spirit today. And I'm probably going to wind up calling this one Clues in the Fruit. And it's not as simple, unfortunately, as feeling like these are good points to measure a person's character by, because as we know, I mean, that's true on one hand, but on the other hand, there's a reason why a deceptive person is called a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? Because they have the sheep's clothing, and the sheep's clothing is oftentimes made up of those fruits. And so this is what's so hard. This is why we wind up gaslighting ourselves, see? Because we have these points and we're like, well, they do seem kind. Well, they do seem gentle. Well, they do seem patient, And so, we're going to talk about looking deeper today, and how we can discern by not totally dismissing these points, because they're very important, but by just viewing it a little bit different and just dissecting all of this. So I hope you enjoy the message. So a lot of times we wind up in bad situations with a wolf in sheep's clothing because we've made the mistake of trusting them up front, and a lot of times we put what we desire or what we hope for or want in a new connection with it, whether it's somebody we're dating or someone that we are coming to know as a friend or whatever it is. We want to trust them, and so we do. We trust them because we want to trust them. And of course, the issue with that is that it's very risky. Because these people, not only can they just simply lie to us, right? They can influence us. And I think that understanding the impact that their lies can have in our life is really important, because they can literally help to form or shape or change our view about this whole world and every aspect within it and beyond, even our understanding of reality and God. And so just something to keep in mind. So let me ask you this: have you ever Googled your symptoms online, and you wind up realizing that you have like 12 diseases and like 5 genetic disorders and a couple of viruses thrown in there? And it's like that's a good analogy to open up with, and here's why. Belief can be the catalyst for our actions that lead to self-sabotage, right? Because I'll tell you why. I was saying earlier, we at some point in our life we may have believed people and given them the benefit of the doubt because we wanted to, right? And it's the same thing when you're Googling your symptoms. It's kind of like if you just immediately put credibility on that, on whatever your online search results were, and you run to the wrong doctor who's money hungry and unethical, they might be like, yeah, you do have this and this and this, but I can help you with it. See, I'm not saying all are that way, but this is just an illustration, right? This is the danger in eating the forbidden fruit, okay? And when I say forbidden fruit, here's what I mean. I mean taking what someone else is telling us as truth, whether it's an online search result or a corrupt person in power, such as, if you go to the wrong doctor who really shouldn't be a doctor, or whether you are getting to know someone and you start out by trusting them as opposed to waiting to get to know them, right? So listening to someone else for guidance, allowing this other person to influence and shape your beliefs, your perception of the world, that's what I mean when I say there's danger in eating the forbidden fruit, okay? So again, that when I say beliefs can be the catalyst for our actions that lead to self-sabotage, because we have a choice to allow another person to infiltrate that fortress, that barrier, that armor. We have a choice to allow someone else to come through and affect our beliefs. Because once those beliefs have been changed, now we are acting from our own, I think the word is volition. I could be totally wrong. It's still early. I'll just use that for an excuse, right? It's still early. But from our own choices, right? But that's how covert manipulators work. And that's why it's hard to detect. And that's why we blame ourselves, because a lot of times, our decisions come from us, but we're leaving out the fact that we were influenced or persuaded, even ever so subtly. See? So what we must realize is that the forbidden fruit is still presented to us today. It's not just an old legend, fairy tale, folklore, if that's your perception, or it's not just a long forgotten piece of history recorded in the Bible, right? It's literally still a process that we all experience in our modern life, right? Our present day life. So that forbidden fruit is still regularly presented to us today by people who are tempting us with their wisdom. Okay? Their wisdom. So, let's take a look at Colossians chapter 2, verse 8, and get a little bit of insight from the good book. All right, so Colossians chapter 2, verse 8 says, Beware. Sounds very ominous, doesn't it? Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the traditions of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ. So I'm reading from this Bible, the Word Study Bible by Thomas Nelson, and I really enjoy it. So I want to share with you the opening introduction to Colossians, just a little snippet here. It says, Paul's purpose is to show that Christ is preeminent, first and foremost in everything, and the Christian's life should reflect that priority. Because believers are rooted in Him, alive in Him, hidden in Him, and complete in Him. It is utterly inconsistent for them to live life without Him. So it's, again, when we, usually unintentionally, when we allow another person to come in and persuade us, covertly, but the result is that we are being now led and guided by this other person, right? Well, that's highlighting the issue that's presented right here in the opening of Colossians, right? It's inconsistent for us to live our life without, Christ being first and foremost and taking priority, essentially. So, yes. And then, of course, we have this section, too, in chapter 2 is called Rooted in Christ Jesus. So we have to beware, be aware. It truly is a process of waking us up when we realize, okay, I put aside my inner guidance because I didn't give it the credibility it deserved. Even if you are a spiritual person, it's it's an illusion in this reality, this physical material reality, to forget that inner guidance inside of us is holy and spiritual, that we are a temple, That's the illusion, is that we forget that piece of it, and we just think it's us. It's just us, guiding us. And so when we are immersed in that illusion, right? At that point, this other person can now convince you that they know better than you. And so it's just truly something to keep in mind. But I want us to evaluate this verse here. Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the traditions of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ. This is important because we see this a lot. I would say nowadays, but I think, we always have throughout time. There's always someone out there who is trying to come across like they just have so much wisdom to share with you that, you need to listen to them and only them. And just be persuaded to the degree. See, it's kind of like these manipulators. They want you to wear blinders, which is why in a covertly abusive relationship, they isolate you, or if they don't isolate you, they do it spiritually, energetically, psychologically, by telling you this person's bad and here's the reason, this person's bad and here's the reason, this person's bad and here's the reason, and so it cuts you off. And sometimes you're on the flip side of this. Let me just have a little tangent here. Sometimes people really are bad for another person. Maybe you get to know somebody and you can see that this person is surrounded by people who are affecting them in a negative way, and you try to tell them, like, hey, once you get close, like, you might want to take a look here, and you might want to take a look over here, because I'm seeing how these people are affecting you, so that's the kind of thing where this stuff can get flipped around, and the fingers can get pointed at you. But again, you have to look at the whole picture. Like if you're on the outside observing, it's important to see the whole picture as much as you can to be able to understand, if you're evaluating the people trying to understand their true character and see their heart for real. Just taking a snapshot is often not enough to really understand, right? Without the context. The context is critical. That's my point here. But these people who want to truly just take the reins of your mind, they just want you totally focused on them, and that means cutting out your inner guidance too, see? And when you just hand that over, it's not a conscious decision, but what can prevent this from happening is making it a conscious decision to stay rooted in the divine, see? That's the part that you understand. Oh, I was a spiritual person, always have been, but I wasn't holding on to that grounding, that divine luminous beam that connects my heart, to the Holy Spirit, to God Himself. I kind of just wasn't thinking about that. Well, you have to start your day, every day thinking about that, reminding yourself of that, because there's so much here in this reality to help us forget, right? But this forbidden fruit is listening to others for guidance, okay? So let's take a look from that verse we read at the word spoil, right? The etymology of that. From the 1300s, it meant to strip someone violently of clothes, strip a slain enemy, rob, plunder, or village. Later in the 14th century, it meant to deprive someone of an essential quality. So there's still this essence of theft or robbery, right? So then it changes, just like so many other words I've illustrated on my channel here. In the 1560s, it meant to overindulge. So, yes, to overindulge, right? There's two different ways of looking at this. You can look at this as, say, a thief right? Taking from someone, that is kind of overindulging. Like they can't create and sustain enough of their own energy, motivation, that they have to steal it from someone else. That is an overindulgence. So on one hand, it's consistent, the definition, as it kind of evolves through the years. But on the other hand, it kind of looks a little different too, because there's this essence of robbery, which only comes from a spirit of lack, and then it shifts to a spirit of overindulgence, which is abundance. So it's like going from lack to abundance. Just really interesting. But so from being deprived to being overindulged, just another kind of subtle metamorphosis of that word, one way you can look at it, right? So what can be exploited is our effort to do what is written in the Bible, right? Proverbs chapter 4 verse 7 is where it talks about wisdom being the principal thing, and with all of our wisdom to get understanding. So if you're learning and walking the path of growth and humility, it's essential to remember that there are wolves in sheep's clothing. We have to remind ourselves of this every day, because the illusion is the sheep's clothing. So to remind ourselves that, you can see everybody is sheep, but some of them are going to be wolves hiding behind that facade. We have to remind ourselves of this, right? So it's essential to remember that. But also, Colossians, is it Colossians chapter 2 verse 8? Yeah, we need to remember that too, that we just talked about. We're told to test the spirits. We're supposed to test the spirits. We might notice if they are offering us their wisdom, especially if it comes with a little part that seems off or odd, such as a little tinge of negativity, criticism, judgment, condescension, some kind of bad energy that's attached to what is being presented to us as being helpful, right? So look for that. Look for that to be a big clue to the manipulation. Because if they're simply sharing truth, it should stand on its own merit. It shouldn't have to be in competition with lies. And a lot of this truly comes down to what you feel. Again, it's like there's this higher wisdom at work in all of us that sometimes we can only access through literally, like somatically. I think they call it somatically in our body. The way we feel when we hear someone who's trying to be nice or helpful or loving, right? So instilling fear through negativity can be a motivating factor when someone's trying to steer you in a direction that benefits them. Look for that too. Do you walk away from an interaction with someone who claims to care for you feeling fearful and uneasy and anxious? So a negative or destructive spirit may be active in a person like that, right? And I feel like when you believe in a spiritual realm, people who are not on guard, people who don't believe in it, who are just, like we talked about recently in my last video, empty vessels, these destructive, negative spirits can affect us through these people who are not on guard, who are, you might call empty vessels. That spirit may be acting through them to affect us, and they're unconscious of this fact, But there are some people who are willing participants. They know that this is going to bring you down. They want it to bring you down so that they can now offer you the solution and therefore get you hooked. Right? So instead of getting stuck, though, trying to decipher if a person really knows what they're doing or not, you might just come to a place where you say, if I can just recognize that negative spirit that's present in that person and disengage, that's all I need to do. We don't need to cast stones, just disengage, to protect ourselves. So this exemplifies, by their fruits they'll be known. The Bible says we're vessels. It's about what's motivating someone, okay? So let's consider 3 things here. If we are instructed to think on good things, and also be wise as serpents, and also to get wisdom and furthermore understanding, then it seems to me that if we respect anyone enough to listen to their words of wisdom, right, that they're presenting that way, then we should be able to tell that they are presenting not only problems and flaws and faults, like pointing, out whatever's wrong with our circumstance, or, our circle of friends that they're trying to convince us are really frenemies, or, the decisions we're making, whatever they're pointing out that's wrong, they should also offer us solutions, right? But again, this whole approach can also be exploited so that they come out looking like the savior in your life too. So just be aware of that. The divine design, is solution oriented too. See, I think we're all inclined to want to seek answers, to want to seek resolutions, right? But this whole process of becoming aware of deception in all its ways, and the cunningness of it, it's something that we truly have to learn in stages and layers, and we grow and evolve as we do. Nobody's coming into this existence just batting 10 out of 10 from the start. It just doesn't work that way, and unfortunately we have a lot of lessons to learn. But someone who is rooted like a tree and good soil, right, and the good spirit, they'll offer you not only the solutions, the problems and the solutions, but they'll be willing to offer you tools for self-evaluation too. The iron sharpening iron, right? We're going to get a little bit deeper. I'm going to give you, a key point here in just a minute. So just look for all these things. Do they never criticize you, or they never, I know from experience someone who was, deeply rooted in deception, and they would never tell you anything bad about yourself. Even if you asked for genuine constructive feedback, they wouldn't give it. So these are just things to look for, when they're pointing out problems and solutions. Are they willing to also point out, like a good friend, your part in that, like how you need to change and grow and stuff, or not? But the fruits of the Spirit, this is going to be a big part of our discussion from this point forward. Let's take a look at them, right? They're love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Now, these can also be, like I mentioned earlier in the video, observable traits of a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? Because it's part of their facade, which is why we have to use discernment. So, in my experience, observing people presenting themselves to be one way, but truly living another, the number one virtue they struggled with is patience. Because just like in the physical material realm, wearing a mask gets uncomfortable after a while. See, it's why they have to have frequent breaks away from you, if you notice. I've observed this in multiple people who were very manipulative and scheming. So it's the whole Jekyll and Hyde syndrome, okay? It's like this, their true self, that they're trying to cover up and hide, that has to come up for air pretty often. It has to breathe. The mask has to be pulled away for a minute for them to catch their breath, like energetically, because think about it, when they're living behind the sheep's clothing, behind the mask in front of you, just for many hours on end. They're living inconsistent with their own truth. They're kind of, in a way, even though they're doing this to ultimately benefit themselves in some way, in the present moment, moment after moment after moment, for hours on end, it must feel uncomfortable for them, because think about it. It's being inconsistent. It's living inconsistent with the truth, their truth of who they really are. And so that same mechanism is at work within us, that we need to listen to when we don't feel right, when something is irritating to our spirit, see? When we're unconscious of the fact that we're being conned, this uncomfortable energy we're feeling is screaming for our attention. It's this higher wisdom that's trying to get our attention somehow. So, when you're uncomfortable, you get cranky, right? Which is why they rarely ever seem at peace, truly. If you notice, there's always this constant undertone of agitation, right? They don't even seem capable of real joy either. So they can't pretend 24/7. So just look for that, okay? The consistency, their lack of patience, up to a point. They're needing to get away from you, right? So sometimes they'll project their concerns about these things onto you too. So watch for this, like passively, in question form. Because they're feeling uncomfortable. It'll get your attention if it's obsessive or out of place. They'll be like, "Are you okay? Are you feeling okay?" Or, "You seem frustrated." And really it's them. You're like, "No, I'm fine." So, and other times they won't ask you directly, but they'll just react to you. I've had this happen to me directly. You're just going about your day with them, and they'll just suddenly react to you like, "Oh my gosh." They'll react like you were being impatient, or like you were acting the way they felt on the inside, like you were acting irritated or reactive or frustrated or impatient or whatever, and you're not. And they'll react to you like, "Oh, okay." And you're like, "Why are you?" Clearly it's odd. It's an odd thing to experience, right? Which I actually made a video called Oddities. It's very much about detecting the things that are just off, right? So look for the good fruits, appreciate those that bring peace to your spirit too, right? Because people who bring you peace are usually the ones who have some solutions for you, right? And be appreciative of things that, a good friend makes you aware of, that even if it's a hard truth. But most importantly, I would say, look for a person's own consistent embodiment, right, of the fruits of the Spirit. Are they exemplifying? Are they exuding and exemplifying these traits themselves? Is there one or two, even like patience or something that's just, it's inconsistent, or there's they struggle, or and we all struggle with these things at times. I'll say that, self-control or gentleness, or sometimes we can all get kind of snappy, but just these are just tools, for your discernment. And again, when you're zoomed out and you're looking at this from an expanded, elevated position, I think that just taking these tools of discernment in mind, it will help you to see things more clearly. So that's what I've learned anyway on my journey. So thank you so much for coming along to hear the message. I hope that it was beneficial. I hope you found value in it. I hope it got the wheels turning, and I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.